Then we went inside for the performance. It was amazing. Standing ovation, as you can see there. The audience were crying. The actors were crying. Hello and welcome to the Ann and Phelim Scoop. Just me in the studio today, but we're going to go right away over to footage of Monday night's October 7 play at UCLA. It was an amazing night, an amazing experience. As you remember, we went to Israel, recorded testimony of people who survived, who fought back during October 7th. We crafted it into a play. It was on UCLA on Monday night. It was a test for UCLA. Let's go over and we'll give you the full experience now. It's an amazing night, and let's hear what everyone from every side thought of the night. So let's go over there now. So welcome to the Ann and Phelim Scoop. We're standing here outside the Fire Museum for the UCLA performance of October 7th. There's about 100 armed cops. There were helicopters, there's drones, there's a bomb-sniffing dog.
I thought I was going to cry when I saw it, actually, because it's extraordinary. I mean, you made the point earlier, Phil. It's kind of amazing. This is a play with just the words of people who survived the October 7th attack, and we need 100 armed police and guards, and we had 2 helicopters a minute ago.
In Los Angeles.
I mean, what is going on?
You know, it is shocking. You know, I think we're too used to this now, security where Jews gather. We should not be used to that in Los Angeles or anywhere in 2024. It's a national scandal, it's an international scandal, and it should not be tolerated.
Yeah. We brought this play to New York for 6 weeks. We were in Princeton, we're in UCLA, and we want to come to your campus. To every campus in the country.
So please, we're raising money for that. So go to october7theplay.com
and donate.
Wildly, because this is not cheap.
Yeah.
And but it's very important. Thank you. Bye.
See you later.
Then we went inside for the performance. It was amazing. Standing ovation, as you can see there. The audience were crying. The actors were crying. And then, let's hear what the audience thought. We did some interviews with audience members after the plays. Let's hear what they thought, and let's
go to that now.
Yeah.
I thought it was very powerful. I think it's important to bear witness to the stories that the people, what they went through. I've been to the Nova exhibit 5 times now, so I've heard a lot of the personal accounts through that. But there was some new stories that I heard, and I think it's important to hear everyone's story that experienced this horror. And so to hear the new stories was good for me as well. And I really appreciated the stories that I haven't heard. There's a lot of ignorance in understanding the world and how the world works. We're very isolated in the United States in our thinking, and we don't understand how other people experience life. And I think, especially the youth, it's good for them to understand. And I definitely think this is an important play for the youth to see, for sure. For everyone to see, but definitely for the youth.
I felt a lot. I'm still processing, and I think that, some of what makes this play special is that it's a play about a memorial to a terrible event, but it's still happening. People are still living through it, still processing it, and the world has moved on so fast from that moment that we haven't had time to have this moment, and I think this play has given a lot of people that kind of moment, including myself. Well, UCLA is my alma mater. I was studying here up until very recently, and seeing, I think, a lot of the violence and protests on campus, the fact that this play was shown, they gave permission for it to be shown, and also that it was almost entirely peaceful. There was no, at least in the venue, no protests, no no disruptors. That was really, it was nice to have some peace and some feeling of actual diversity, dealing with such a difficult and complicated issue.
It was powerful to hear firsthand testimonies and how the characters' stories were kind of interwoven with one another, and it's stories of shock and survival and heroism that just kind of like grew out of their lived experiences, like how people kind of respond in those situations. And I think the the things that you kind of, if you're following the story of October 7th, you've heard testimonies, you've heard like people say things in their own words, but like survivors, like to have it dramatized in that way, I think makes it a little bit more impactful than just hearing those people in their own words, processing it. Having actors do it kind of lends it, makes it land a little more emotionally. I think it's probably one of the places where it needs to be. One of the, I think, writers in the Q&A afterwards remarked, I don't know if you could sit through this play and be somebody who is supportive of what Hamas did. And yet, if you're on the fence and you don't know where to side and you hear some of this stuff, you can't, like, deny what you just heard after that. It's like you have to grapple with it. So I think that's important.
As an Israeli, I think it was very important the way I wasn't expecting for it to be played that way. I thought it's more like a cold reading where just people taking turns to do the reading. But the way it was done, it was really made all the audience to be part of it and made us kind of like relive what they had to live on October 7th. And it was I got a lot of goosebumps during that. And it was very touching, very hard to watch, but very necessary. So I felt like they had their voices heard the right way, that people can like see the people and the victim as people, as human beings. There's no sides. They're just these horrible events that happened, and they were able to really like bring it across very well. I think it's very important. I think the main issue today with everything happening, including here in UCLA, is that a lot of people are not educated and they will still go and speak their minds, not truly knowing what is going on, not hearing the two sides and being objectives about it. They're choosing one side, the side that is easier to believe. At the end of the day, there's only 14 million Jewish in the world. This is 0.2% of the world population versus 20% of Arab Muslims. There are the rest, and we can never outdo them. There's no way for us to win the media side. So these kind of play going around, showing another side, opening people to maybe listen and like really truly experience something else and get out of the box, I think it's super important, really.
So that was everything from the October 7th performance at UCLA. Now, it's been in Princeton, it's been in UCLA. We were going to take it around all the campuses in the US, all the bad campuses, and that's a lot of them, places that need to hear the truth. They really don't like it, as you know. So please help us do that by going to october7theplay.com. We're not for profit. Every donation is tax deductible. So go to october7theplay.com. It's a very, very important project, and we're so happy to be in the middle of it, and we're so happy to be doing it. So go to october7theplay.com. We're going now to an interview I did with Miranda Devine about her new book. I just did it. She's an incredible journalist. She's spent years digging up corruption in the Biden family, and her new book is The Big Guy. So we'll go over now to that interview I did earlier with Miranda, and let's go to that now. So we're joined now by our good friend Miranda Devine, who actually was one of the first journalists ever to write about us. When we started off on this journey about 20 years ago, when she was working for the Sydney Morning Herald in Australia. We arrived in Australia off the plane, and there was half a page written by this journalist called Miranda Devine about our documentary, Mind Your Own Business. But I digress. Now she's a columnist with the New York Post, Fox News contributor. One of the best journalists out there. Especially, she's been wonderful on White House corruption, exposing White House corruption. She's out with her new book, The Big Guy: How a President and His Son Sold Out America. It's a bestseller, and we'll come to that later on too. Miranda, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Phil. I'm great to be with you.
So, I know who the big guy is, but actually, let's explain to people. Let's because the media has done such a great job of covering up this story. Let's try and bring people back to the basics. Who is the big guy?
The big guy is Joe Biden, and that was the nickname that his son, Hunter Biden, who was a crack addict, his business partners used to refer to Joe Biden because the Biden family, was paranoid that anyone would find out about Joe's involvement in his son and his brother Jim's influence peddling scheme that he internationalized when he was vice president. And so they were raking in millions of dollars from China and Russia and Ukraine and Kazakhstan, Romania, you name it, all the countries that Vice President Joe Biden had carriage of, because basically Barack Obama outsourced foreign policy to his vice president.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, wasn't there an email about we're giving 10% to the big guy or 50% to the big guy? I mean,
yeah. So the sort of infamous email that we first brought out in our first week of reporting about Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop back in October of 2020, one of the biggest stories was an email between Hunter Biden and his business partners in which they were talking about how they were going to divide up the equity in this new Chinese joint venture. And among the shares was going to be 10% held by Hunter for the big guy.
mm-hmm.
And, at the time, we weren't really sure who the big guy was, but we now know because Hunter Biden's former business partners, Tony Bobulinski and also Devon Archer and others have said, yes, Joe Biden was the big guy. That was the name that we used to refer to him, to just make sure that no one knew of his real involvement.
Yeah. A lot of people know about the laptop now. But the laptop is really only the tip of the iceberg. Explain how deep this corruption went.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, we were given the laptop by Rudy Giuliani back in October of 2020, 3 weeks before the presidential election. And there was bombshell information. There was a lot of Hunter Biden's porn, but there was his sort of homemade porn and other sort of gross stuff. But underneath it all were documents and emails and text messages that all pointed to Joe Biden's involvement in this very lucrative influence peddling scheme. And this was at a time when Joe Biden, during the campaign, had been swearing blind to the American voter that he knew nothing about his son Hunter's overseas business dealings. And so we had, for instance, our first story was an email that showed it was from Hunter Biden's Ukrainian paymaster from this corrupt energy company in Ukraine that was paying him $1 million a year. And he was thanking Hunter for introducing him to his father the previous night in Washington when the Vice President Joe Biden had come to a dinner at Cafe Milano to meet Hunter's business partners from Ukraine, from Russia, and from Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
And so this is very damaging information to one of the candidates for president, especially Joe Biden, who holds himself out as, honest Joe and the poorest man in Congress, even though his lifestyle belies that. And so there was immediately this cover-up operation that we weren't even aware, even being in the thick of it, we weren't even aware of how far it extended and how deep into the deep state Joe Biden was protected and Hunter Biden. And so immediately within a couple of hours of our story going live on October 14, 2020, Twitter and Facebook censored it. They shut it down. They throttled it. Twitter actually locked the New York Post account for 2 weeks until a few days before the election. And Twitter said that we had violated their hacked materials policy. And that didn't mean much at the time. We were sort of befuddled. What's hacked about this laptop that Hunter Biden's abandoned at a laptop repair shop? I mean, he's a crack addict. He leaves things everywhere. He didn't pay his $85 bill. He didn't come back and get it. It became the property of the laptop repair shop owner. What are they talking about? Hacked material. What we then found out, and what the subject of the book is about, is the cover-up, which is a bigger story, I think, than the corruption, just as in Watergate. It's the fact that the FBI had gone to those social media companies in the weeks and months before the election, and they had sort of softened them up and pre-bunked our story. They knew it was coming because they had been spying, unbeknownst to Rudy Giuliani, they'd been spying on his iCloud.
Wow.
So they would have seen the email that came in to Rudy Giuliani from the laptop repair shop owner, John Paul MacIsaac, basically laying out chapter and verse quite forensically that what he saw as crimes on the laptop, particularly to do with Ukraine and Burisma and these vast amounts of money that Hunter Biden was making. And also the FBI, if they were watching Giuliani's iCloud, as I presume they were, since they had this covert search warrant, they would have seen a couple of messages between me and Rudy Giuliani in earlier October, with me just saying to him, look, hold on, don't give the story to anyone else. We're interested. So they knew it was coming. And they'd also had possession of the laptop since December of 2019 because John Paul MacIsaac, the repair shop owner, he didn't want it anywhere near him. He thought that these were serious enough matters of national security that he wanted the FBI to have it. He's a very law-abiding guy. And it was hard for him to get them interested. And finally, they did take the laptop itself and a copy of the hard drive. But he, of course, had kept other copies on his computer at work. And when he heard nothing from them over the next sort of 6 or 7 months, he became increasingly alarmed.
Yeah.
He saw that Donald Trump had been impeached for the sins of Joe Biden in Ukraine, hilariously enough, to now we know that was a deliberate distraction, that impeachment, to distract from the damaging material on Hunter Biden's laptop. And so we saw the FBI there. And then after just a couple of days after our story went live and got censored, lo and behold, there is this letter written by 51 former intelligence officials, most of them from the CIA, about 42 of them were CIA, ex-CIA. Although actually we found out later that many were active contractors at the time. And they claimed falsely that Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian disinformation operation, or they called it had all the earmarks of a Russian information operation. But of course, Russian disinformation is what everybody read. That's the cliche about Donald Trump. And so that killed the story stone dead. We now know that that letter was instigated by Antony Blinken, who's the Secretary of State now, but was then a senior campaign official in the Joe Biden campaign, a very close family friend of the Bidens. And he had contacted Mike Morell, who was a former acting director of the CIA, hoping to be Joe Biden's CIA director, finally getting the top job if Joe Biden won the election. So he had a lot of skin in the game, and he was very happy to get 50 of his colleagues to sign this letter. And the other thing we found out subsequently was that it wasn't just these former CIA people. It was the CIA director, Gina Haspel, at the time. That letter was deemed so political when Mike Morell put it through the sort of classification, declassification process that everybody has to go to when you're talking about CIA stuff. They thought that it was so political that they sent it upstairs to be vetted by Gina Haspel, and she gave it the green light. So that was a CIA election interference, disinformation operation.
Totally. And all these people, I mean, all these people still have security clearances and still go, still are in situation rooms and still at conferences and still get briefings, top secret briefings. have access to top secret information, correct?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
many of them, I can't remember now how many, but it was around about a dozen at the time we looked, like a few months ago, were contractors. So they're actually actively working for the CIA while being sort of retired. They're still doing gigs for the CIA, being paid by the CIA.
That is,
James Clapper, John Brennan appear on MSNBC, CNN all the time as intelligence experts opining on all sorts of things. They're still enormously influential, and they used the great sort of influence and cachet of their former high officialdom to mislead the American people and keep them in the dark about some important information about one of the two candidates for President, Joe Biden. And we know there have been some polls showing that if Biden voters had known this information about Joe Biden, enough of them would have changed their vote to make a material difference to the election outcome.
I want to talk more about the book and all that as well, but I of course now I want to talk about me, and my friend Kevin Morris.
Yes.
The first chapter of the book is about the sugar brother, as Hunter's friends called him, Kevin Morris. Now, Kevin Morris is an entertainment lawyer living here in Los Angeles, up the road there, and he kind of, I don't know who's more pathetic in this. Is it Hunter or Kevin? Kevin met him at a fundraiser, and Hunter gave him the big doe-eyed sad story. Kevin said, "I'm going to solve all your problems," and basically he assembled a team of accountants. He assembled a team of lawyers. He assembled a large sum of money. I think it was over $7 million, and gave it to Hunter. It's very funny. Gave a lot of money to Hunter to pay his his tax bills, and Hunter blew it on hookers and cocaine. Actually, it was very funny. Isn't that right?
Sort of. He says it was a loan, and Hunter did. I mean, he did pay off his IRS bills, and he did. I'm not sure if Hunter says he's clean, so I'm not sure he's spending it on crack. He's remarried and he has a child, and he's supposedly getting his life back on track. But I mean, Kevin Morris was certainly paying for his lavish lifestyle, like $30,000 monthly rental in Malibu and Hollywood Hills, etc.
Part of this Kevin Morris strategy was to get on a private plane and go to Serbia, where we were recording the My Son Hunter movie, and pretend to be a documentary filmmaker and infiltrate our set for 2 to 3 days, trying to get as much information about our research as possible. That's currently so that we're currently taking an ethics complaint against him in the California bar, and they're slow walking it, of course, because because this is the organization that let Tom Girardi steal tens of millions of dollars from widows and orphans over 30 years. I think he had something like, Tom Girardi had 35 ethics complaints against him, but he had an annual party for the Bar Ethics Association every year, and surprisingly, these complaints all disappeared, and he funded and hired lots of them. So they're investigating this flagrant breach of ethics. You're supposed to declare if you're working for a client when you're dealing with someone who may have evidence for or against your client. It's bar association. You have to say, "I'm a lawyer working for now. Will you talk to me?" So he didn't do that, and he used deceptive. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's something more sinister about Kevin Morris as well, which is we only have found out recently from the IRS whistleblowers, and that is that he too was being protected by the CIA. So when the IRS investigators were following the evidence trail and getting blocked by the prosecutors every which way, especially anything that led to Joe Biden or the identity of the big guy, as well as that obstruction, they also were blocked from interviewing Kevin Morris, who was an important witness because, of course, he was funding Hunter Biden, and there was a separate FBI investigation that went nowhere that was looking into whether this was a violation of federal election law, in that it was an in-kind donation allegedly to the Joe Biden campaign.
Exactly. Sorry to interrupt here. If Donald Trump paying off someone who's making allegations about something he did before he ran for election
Yeah.
about something, and if you add X and Y and Z and get that was an in-kind contribution to interfere with an election that he didn't know he was even going to be, that he was running in. If paying off somebody here for something completely unconnected is an election contribution, surely. And even I think, and Kevin Morris said in testimony, it was to eliminate the political risk. He gave money to Hunter Biden to eliminate political risk. That's an
Well, it was
in-kind.
in an email, actually. It was in an
It was
email.
an
He
email.
claimed that the political risk, he was talking about something else, but his explanation didn't hold water in the timeline, because the only political risk at that time was that Joe Biden was in the primaries,
Yeah.
and it was very iffy for him. He wasn't doing very well, and Hunter Biden had two big liabilities that were about to blow up, all to do with his fecklessness and lack of money, or wasting money. His ex-wife, Kathleen, because of the unpaid taxes, she had a lien put on her home and wasn't able to get a passport to travel overseas. She was about to go to court and blow it all up again. She was furious. And then he'd also impregnated a woman called London Roberts from Arkansas, who he'd met in a strip club in Washington, D.C. And there'd been a paternity test. It was his child. He was refusing to acknowledge it or pay child support. That was going to court as well. So what Kevin Morris did with all his money was swoop in and fix Hunter Biden's problems. He paid off the taxes. He paid, got the lien taken off, took care of London Roberts, the woman in Arkansas, and she was given a huge, I can't remember what it was, like $25,000 a month or
That's
something.
right. Something like that.
Child support paid for by Kevin Morris. He paid off Hunter's Porsche bills, everything.
Yep.
Everything was taken care of, so that all the messiness that was about to spring into the public disappeared and was damped down. That was extraordinary. I mean, that saved Joe Biden, because Hunter Biden was bubbling along in the background as a liability, and it kept quiet throughout the campaign, and there were no pokey journalists wanting to look into it. So Kevin Morris was doing that, but that's why the IRS guys wanted to interview him, the investigators. And what they were told by the prosecutors was, no, you can't, because we were summoned to Langley, to the CIA headquarters, and were told that Kevin Morris was off limits. Now, I never got to the bottom of why the CIA was protecting Kevin Morris. I asked Kevin Morris, and he just made light of it, made jokes about it. So I'm not sure whether it was just he was protected as an extension of the CIA protecting Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, or whether there was something separate that maybe, he's a big-time Hollywood producer. He has access to a lot of foreign, intervention in Hollywood and so on. Maybe he was helping out this. Who knows what that story is? All I can tell you is that he was being protected by the CIA, which also calls into question the sort of accidental meeting that he claims he had at this fundraiser with Hunter Biden. And so it was just very good timing for the Biden family.
Well,
Sugar Brother showed up.
Democrats have remarkably good timing when it comes to legal matters. You talked about, Hunter says he's clean, and I don't want to get to someone's personal life really, but Hunter Biden is a liar, right? And he's and
like his father. Yeah,
but it's a bit like, it reminds me of the Clintons. They lie even when, some of them famously said they lie even when they don't have to. But he's just a compulsive liar. And I know he's a compulsive liar because, the opening pages of this book are about his time up in the Hollywood Hills when he claimed his privacy was being breached, and he had to get out in a midnight flit. Now, he invited ABC and New Yorker and New York Times into the house. He claims that a MAGA mob of 20 people arrived at his door in the Hollywood Hills and frightened his wife, and he had to leave overnight. Now, I used to live in the Hollywood Hills. The roads are so narrow you couldn't get 10 people, 5 people on a I mean, it's dangerous to be a MAGA mob. But also, this is Jussie Smollett level
Yes.
of delusion or deception. The idea that there's 20 MAGA people
Yeah.
in the Hollywood Hills with pitchforks who would call to Hunter Biden's door. By the way, where's the CCTV footage of this? Where is the police report?
Yeah.
Where's your neighbor's ring doorbells? Like, this is a major event in the Hollywood Hills. Like, there's no crime up there. Well, there wasn't until Gascon let all the criminals out, and now there's actually murders up there now. But and then he says, and I don't have any special knowledge. I know what the Hollywood Hills is like, and I know it's very much like walking along in Chicago and two guys jumping Jussie Smollett and saying, "This is MAGA country." And it's like, no, it's not. It's Chicago.
Yeah.
Very similar to that. But then he his idea, he's trying to get clean. His idea then is that they should go to a $20,000 house on the Venice canals. Now, Venice and I live there, is a drug cesspit. Like, there's tinfoil all over the place. There's druggies everywhere. There's actually drugs lying everywhere. There's needles everywhere. You have to be careful walking on the beach. It's the worst place, I think, in America to go if you're a recovering drug addict. But then he talks about how how some people put a large, massive screen, and he had these massive dimensions, and this was in congressional testimony. No, it was on the Moby podcast. How people put this giant screen outside his house 24/7 for weeks on end. Right now, I put the screen outside his house. Right, it was half the size he said it was. It was on the back of a van, and it was there for an afternoon.
Right.
I know, because I paid for it. These are expensive, right? They're not, I'm not going to pay for something 24/7 for weeks on end. I know, I paid for it.
So that's a classic, just total delusion and fantasy, again, exaggeration by him.
Yeah.
And he's always a victim.
Yeah. And, he's living in it's poor.
And he trashed that place, that Venice house. Allegedly the owner was just furious about the mess, and Hunter just said to the guy, "Well, look, just call Kevin Morris; he'll take care of it for me." Someone always takes care of his messes.
And Kevin Morris has spent $7 million,
at least.
Well, that's what he told Congress, right, under oath. So I suppose he probably would. Maybe he would lie, but I suppose he has a lot of money. Like, there's a lot of money in Hollywood. Like, people don't realize this. People don't realize the lives of Hollywood celebrities.
Well, he made a lot of money from the South Park guys.
He
did that streaming deal for them. I think that was worth $500 million.
Yeah.
So he made a lot of money. He has a private jet. And look, he's been very kind to Hunter, I will have to say. Like, however or whatever reason he came into it, he really does seem to have had some genuine compassion for Hunter, as you see with every single person that Hunter comes in contact with, that he has this magic ability to make them feel sorry for him and basically ruin their lives for him. I think Kevin Morris's family suffered. He certainly cost him a lot of money. Tony Bobolinsky, was completely ripped off. Devon Archer's life is in ruins because of his association. Other Hunter Biden business partners dead, in jail, missing. It's just he has the kind of toxic reverse Midas touch. You come near him, you get sucked in, and your life is ruined.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not buying the kindness art interpretation of Kevin Morris. There's something a bit pathetic about it, in my opinion. There's just something a bit pathetic about it. Like, look after your family. I mean, and
it's political too. I think
it's what?
It's political too.
Yes. That's it.
Trump.
Well, but also it's the center of power. Morris wants to be, the ambassador to France or the head of the Hollywood Commission for the White House or whatever. It's he there's plenty of other addicts in LA that he doesn't help who aren't the president's son. You
Of
know?
course.
Yeah.
It's the trips to Camp David, it's the visits to the White House, it's the state dinners. I mean,
Yeah.
not that he was invited to that, but it's all that proximity that is intoxicating, particularly to Democrats. And Devon Archer told me this saying that Joe Biden has, which is, "You do me a favor, you're my friend. You do my son a favor, and you're a friend for life." So he really
Yeah.
lavishes charm and praise on anybody who's gets his son out of trouble and pays him money, etc.
I just want to put this to you, but people will say, but Hunter Biden, he was charged and found guilty of criminal acts. That shows there's no cover up.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, only because the DOJ was dragged kicking and screaming by these two heroic IRS whistleblowers, Gary Shapley and Joe Ziegler, who were beavering away there in Delaware on this 5-year investigation into Hunter Biden that should have been over and done with within a year or two. And just kept on getting blockaded and stonewalled and slow walked. And the US attorney in Delaware, I mean, there's a whole story about him, but David Weiss, who when the proverbial hit the fan, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, who'd gone and said under oath some things that the whistleblowers were showing was not exactly true. In a panic, they made US Attorney David Weiss special counsel, and then he's gone about trying to clean up his own mess, and a whole new set of prosecutors were brought in. The IRS investigators were taken off the case and basically have been retaliated against ever since. But what they managed to do was to stop this sweetheart plea deal that Hunter Biden had entered into with David Weiss's prosecutors with the DOJ, which would have had him just not have to plead guilty to anything, maybe a couple of misdemeanors, go into this diversion program for drugs, and it all would have gone away without a criminal record. And that was going through until the whistleblowers came out. And so then David Weiss said, well, quick, we've got to charge him with something. So they concocted this slightly less sweetheart deal, went to a court in Delaware. But the night before that court case happened, when this deal was supposed to be ratified by this judge, some very peculiar things happened at the court. And basically, there was an amicus brief with all the information from the whistleblowers in it that the judge was supposed to read and that was there publicly for everyone to see. And somebody from Hunter Biden's lawyer's firm called the clerk of the court and got them to take that down, to basically hide it, to close it off, and the amicus brief. And it all, they said afterwards, when the judge got involved and demanded at 9 p.m. that there be answers, it all turned out, they said, to be a big misunderstanding.
Miscommunication, just a miscommunication.
Yeah, that's right. But that alerted the judge, Mary Ellen Noriega, to something fishy going on, I would assume. It seems that she probably did read that amicus brief and she realised that the fix was in. Whatever went through her mind, she certainly asked some probing questions, including, she said to these new set of prosecutors who weren't involved in all the slow walking and were just treating this as a normal case, they'd just been handed the hot potato. She asked them, so does this deal give Hunter Biden immunity in the future for all crimes, including foreign agent violations, illegal foreign lobbying? And the prosecutor had to say, because that would be extraordinary and obscene, said no. Of course, it was supposed to. And so Hunter Biden and his lawyer then arced up and said, well, it's off. The deal is off. And so, boom, it was off. And even though Hunter's lawyers afterwards tried to argue that, the deal had already been ratified and that the DOJ couldn't get out of it because it hadn't really been signed off by the parole board. Therefore, it was not legitimate. And so then these new prosecutors went in using all the work that the IRS investigators, I mean, their indictments were word for word what the IRS investigators had done. Apart from, there were 2 years, the most important years, 2014 and 2015, during Joe Biden's vice presidency, that the statute of limitations, David Weiss had allowed that to run out. And so he could not be charged for illegal foreign lobbying and bribery and so on. And that covered that period that would have been really damaging to President Biden, which was when he had the Ukrainian prosecutor fired who was investigating that corrupt energy company, Burisma, that was paying Hunter. So that was off the table. But still, there were some serious tax fraud and gun felony charges. And Hunter tried his luck in Delaware, thinking, I guess, with Jill Biden showing up every day in her finery and the family trying to intimidate the jury, that the Bidens, who are so big and own Delaware, would get off scot-free. But in fact, I think that backfired on the jury in the gun felony case in June, and they found Hunter guilty on all charges. So his sentencing's after the election. And then, of course, just in your neck of the woods in LA last month, he was indicted on these serious tax fraud charges, and I think there were 9 felonies. And he ended up pleading guilty on the very first day of the trial, just totally selfishly, because by that stage you had a huge jury pool amassed. The judge has, marked off 3 weeks on his calendar. It was going to be a big trial. There was extra security, and Hunter Biden waits till the last moment to plead guilty. So again, the sentencing's after the election. But I mean, the IRS guys and other people, law enforcement people, have told me that there should be jail time for him associated with both these convictions, and then that, of course, we don't expect that he will ever serve a moment in jail, because, of course, his father will pardon him.
Yes, yeah, he will pardon him. He'll pardon him after the election.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the result is. I suppose that begs the question then: what next for Hunter and what next for Kevin Morris? If Kamala wins, I suppose they still have some kind of protection and protect it. If Kamala loses, where do they go? What do they do? I mean, I suppose he's got his art.
Yeah. And look, Kevin Morris has been filming. He's had a documentary film crew following Hunter wherever he goes, and has sort of been, I guess, orchestrating this drama. Remember when Hunter Biden sort of gate crashed a hearing of Congress, of the Oversight Committee, looking into his dealings after refusing a subpoena, defying a subpoena. Remember, he went and gave a press conference on Capitol Hill, dramatically talking about, how he was being persecuted. There are a lot of sort of things that just look like they seem ridiculous, but they seem like they're the climax of a movie. Mr. Biden goes to Washington. So I think that there will be attempts to cash in on Hunter Biden's notoriety and paint him as a sympathetic figure. I mean, there's a documentary out at the moment about Lev Parnas, who was a Ukrainian grifter that was caught up with Rudy Giuliani and then went to jail and then turned on Giuliani and is now with the Democrats, and they're using him as, to try and pour scorn on the laptop and all our reporting and say that it's all Russian disinformation. But this MSNBC Rachel Maddow documentary has this just bizarre scene where Hunter Biden meets with Parnas, and Parnas has tears running down his face, and he apologizes to Hunter, and Hunter says this sort of canned line that he doesn't deliver very well, in which he says, "Oh, so you know that the Department of Justice was weaponized to go after me," which is just such a joke, considering the volume of evidence that the IRS whistleblowers brought forward to show that the DOJ just perverted the course of justice, just corrupted itself to protect Hunter Biden from the consequences of his own reckless greed. And look, Hunter Biden was also protected by the CIA. Of course, the vice president's son ricocheting around the world to China and, Moscow and Europe, and it was being protected because the CIA knew what he was up to. He's a crackhead. He's got a hooker addiction as well.
Hmm.
Of course, they knew what he was up to, but also before he joined the board of Burisma, he was appointed to this very prestigious role. And it's part of the National Endowment for Democracy,
Hmm.
which is the CIA cutout. And it's the sort of democratic arm of that. Now, why
Yeah.
you would put a crackhead with no experience in international affairs onto the board of this body is anyone's business. But I think he used it on his Burisma CV.
Yeah.
He used it on CVs. He was very proud of it. He, in fact, even boasted about it during his congressional testimony.
Yeah.
I think that was just a signal to everybody that this was a made man. This
Yeah.
was a kept
Made man.
man.
Made man, the big guy. It's the mafia.
Son of the big guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
son of the big guy. Listen, Miranda, this is the book, The Big Guy, How a President and His Son Sold Out America. Please buy it. We'll be sending out a link in our email newsletter when it goes out. We have a lot of fans in common, so please buy this book. It should be in the New York Times bestseller list. I was looking at Amazon before I came on here. It's number 8 in Amazon of all books, but the New York Times somehow missed the New York Times bestseller list. So, that's more protection for the big guy and his son. So please, Miranda, thanks for coming on, and please go and buy the book. Thank you, Miranda.
Thanks so much, Phelim.
Okay, bye. So again, that's the book, Big Guy, by Miranda Devine. Please buy it. Please donate to October7theplay.com. And we will see you again next week. Thank you. Bye.